So we'll just move right into a sitting period now. So get yourself into a comfortable sitting position, place where we can sit comfortably enough for the next half hour or so. And taking a deep breath or two just to invite this heart, this body to rest in the present moment. In this simple way, we just invite presence, suggesting to the nervous system, to the heart, that it's safe enough to be intimate right now. So we just allow the breath and the flow of the breath in and out of the body to do its job, settling, resourcing, grounding. And eventually allowing the breath to be as it is, not forcing it to be deep or steady or soothing. Just trusting that this unfolding of breath is natural, lawful, and knowing it, knowing the way it really is to have breath, is trustworthy. We don't actually have to be afraid of knowing the breath any more than we need to be afraid of knowing anything. The breath is nature. Our lives are nature. And getting close to the truth of things is freeing. We're no longer trapped by ignorance or delusion. When this heart, mind, body knows how to be intimate, And this work requires great patience, energy, persistence, remembering to return to the breath over and over and over. It's like we're coming home again and again and again to truth with love. And this practice is actually an art form. It's such a beautiful and creative way to live. We get to utilize all of our skillful means, learning how to be intimate might actually require us to surrender to the truth of challenge and hindrance, to the truth of impatience and fear. And we get to learn how to honor and appreciate all of the forces that arise naturally as we practice being intimate. We might have an intention to be with breath, but what we're really being asked to do is be with fear. Or what we're really being asked to do is be with joy. Everything belongs, nothing out of bounds. Being willing to use all of our skillful means, all of our useful strategies to stay resourced, including moving away, if needed. With the wildness of our hearts and minds in this art form that is our practice. See if in moments we can actually taste the freedom of intimacy, of not being trapped or bound by distraction or delusion, the freedom of knowing the way things are, not needing to turn away. It's okay to open your eyes now. Thanks for your practice, everyone. Go ahead and stretch your legs if you'd like. Move your body a little. My name is Shelly Graf, and I am the Associate Director at Common Ground. I imagine that many of you tune into these Sunday morning practice groups each week, and Mark Nunberg is usually here. Mark Nunberg is a guiding teacher at Common Ground. He's usually here leading, but he is leading a retreat with a team of teachers through Spirit Rock Meditation Center um, this week, and so I'm here subbing for him. It's nice to just scroll through the chat and see a lot of people here saying hello to each other. It's nice to be connected like this. So, just to begin by saying that, yeah, in some moments of our lives, it seems that words are so inadequate. Um, and this seems like one of those moments for me, with so much moving in our social world here in Minneapolis and all over the globe, really. And yet, it seems like the most important thing we can do is continue to use our practice for in service of our own well-being and the well-being of others. And this seems like the most perfect moment for that. So I'll offer some of my reflections on practice this morning in hopes that it will support you. Um, one of the one of the themes in my practice lately has been this concept, this practice, this lived reality of belonging. So I'd like to share some of my reflections with you and what the Buddha's teachings on and around belonging say to help us reckon with the uncomfortable realities of racism and racial injustice. And remembering that I'm a student just like you. So it may seem like, okay, some of these um, practices or suggestions or reflections are interesting or confusing, or I don't know about that. And whatever that is for you, it's really the right way to be. So we're not asked to actually endorse any of the things that we hear. In fact, the Buddha cautions us against this. Views are just views, and we need to be able to recognize them in our mind: views, opinions, beliefs, and see what supports our own well-being and the well-being of others and what doesn't. So it's not that the views themselves or the ideas themselves or the thoughts or the reflections are problematic. It's our attachment to them and the way we use them to hurt ourselves and others, the way our systems do. And waking up from that is a lot of work and practice. And that's what we're here to do together. So I just encourage you to, like I am, being a full student of my practice, no matter how long I've been at this. Um, my primary aim is to be a good student, and I'm hoping that you will do the same as you're listening and practicing, not just to the things that I offer, but to the reflections that all teachers are offering these days. So, my interest in belonging is really around how this heart understands, really understands emptiness and our interconnection to everything. It's a popular uh, repeat of something Martin Luther King said a long time ago. He said, in a real sense, all life is interrelated. All men or people are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. So the question is, how does this our Buddhist practice really impact our ability to enhance the interrelated structure of all reality in positive ways? It seems like Martin Luther King was congruent with the Buddhist teachings. And so in this reality of racial injustice, this reality of violence perpetrated against Black bodies, brown bodies, especially Black bodies, and the reality that we're all sort of swimming in this and contributing to, in one way or another, both our relationship to the present moment and the realities of our interrelated lives. So one of the things that has been, coming up for me and probably many of you is, how do human beings serve as bystanders in moments when there's some real harm playing itself out in front of us. And the video of the murder of George Floyd is a really profound example of this, and something that continues to replay in my mind, just how these other officers were bystanders in this murder that took place. And so the real question for me as a practitioner is, how does the heart shut down or become otherwise non-responsive to the suffering of others? How does this heart let go of, or somehow not be able to find, or its resource in love and compassion and care for each other the way it does right here in this own life? My partner and I were reflecting on this on our long drive from Michigan back to Minneapolis yesterday and last night. And just, using the fabric of our ordinary lives to understand, what does it mean to belong? What does it mean to belong to each other? What does it mean for me to belong to you, for you to belong to me? What does it mean for all of our experiences to belong? Just like I was saying that, yeah, fear belongs here, sadness, anger belongs here, whatever it is, like that sense of belonging, how does that how does that take root in the heart? And how can we sort of unpack this in our ordinary lives so that we can feel more like we have more capacity to show up in those more profound moments that kind of rock us when there's an absence of belonging. This question in my mind about um, how is it possible to feel such a strong sense of belonging, like, oh yeah, to really know clearly that fear when it's moving in the heart belongs here, right? To understand that I don't, at least in some way, I don't have to push this away. To understand that, oh, my partner and I, our families, the people we live with, our friends, we are really connected. I really care. I really have a sense of how responsible I am to contributing to some good in their lives, and they are in mine, right? It's easy to see in some moments, and yet in others, the heart can really make these rules like, well, but not here. Like, let's sacrifice, being provocative here, sacrifice Black bodies in this case, or sacrifice other experiences, other beings. We were driving back, like I was saying, from Michigan, and um, driving down a road and noticed several dead geese in the road and on the side of the road. And just for a moment, it was for both of us really heartbreaking that, oh, like, of course, we don't know what happened, but the assumption was that motorists drove cars into geese, somehow collided, and just really bringing home the reality that some beings are sacrificed. Like we don't have the same sense of belonging to animals perhaps the way that we do people at times. And my partner said in a very wise way, yeah, this is we treat black people like insects sometimes, right? Without that same sense of like, oh, this is an alive human being and I belong to this mutuality of existence here, that there's some that we all are somehow contributing to the realities of our lives. And so so there are more good questions than answers. And like every practice instruction, every teaching, it's really our job to like take it in, absorb it in the body, in the heart, practice with it, reflect on it, and see how does this make sense? And how do these questions support my liberation? Right? Our practice is more about being curious and inquiring than actually establishing rules and just following them. That's the easy way, just to set rules and to just follow them. But the harder work is the work of transforming our relationship to experience, transforming our relationship to uh, our lives, to our collective reality. It's Yeah, you can really feel how there's a pull to just follow laws and policies and guidelines that have been set, values that have been imparted on us. It's much harder to question how those laws came to be, how the policies came to be, and the influences there, to expect that there is uh, some degree of greed, hatred, and delusion influencing our lives as they are in every moment of my own life and my own heart, right? In each moment, some moments are more pure than others, but in many moments, the influences are there for me to, for this heart to feel into the seeds of greed and delusion and ignorance and ill will that are still here. So that must be true with policies and laws and structures and institutional forces, historically. Yet it feels so, the pull to just follow sort of without inquiry is there because it's so easy. It is so easy. And somehow in that ease, there is this sacrificing of human beings who are not regarded or who are purposefully disregarded, who these laws are purposefully established to harm. And this is the force of whiteness. And of course, the force of the seeds of greed, anger, and delusion in our humanness, but also in the West, it's undeniable that the forces of dominance and superiority are embedded into the fabric of how we do business. So it's good to look at that, to use our practice to wake up to the reality of the way things are, to learn to trust the inquiry into truth, rather than assuming rules and just following rules. So, how do I realize the seeds of whiteness that are permeating here in this Western culture, and also the seeds of whiteness that are in me? And let me be clear: um, is not whiteness is the air we breathe. That every human, everyone in the states, in the United States here, is breathing and absorbing in some way. So the manifestations of whiteness, these ideas like I'm not good enough, where does this come from? And perhaps it's seated in lots of places, familial ways, and maybe uh, personal karmic, although nothing is individual, but karmic conditioning here, personality habits, and also in the wider context of Western American culture. So these ideas of I'm not good enough, or I'm not productive enough, or intellectual enough, or this, and especially being cut off from feelings, more intellectual than being rooted in the emotional and in the body. Often being cut off from the body, this sense of disembodiment is a manifestation, at least partially, and I would say largely, in some ways, influenced by whiteness. Whiteness actually strips us of um, this human dignity, our natural compassion and wisdom. So, learning to move out of the power of whiteness into our own natural capacity, our birthright, that which we were nobly born with, and this heart that its natural state, right, is not easy. It is the the marathon rather than the sprint. It is the commitment that we have to reinvigorate moment by moment. That willingness to begin again is because we can see that we really care about waking up to this natural capacity of the heart to love, to care, to know truth, to see clearly the forces of delusion that make it difficult to see clearly. Whiteness strips us of this. One of the there's a quote that's posted in the office at Insight Meditation Society, where I'm training in their 4-year teacher training with Joseph Goldstein and many other teachers. And something that I've heard Joseph say many times, he seems to like this quote, which I completely appreciate too. The mind's natural, and it's from not from Joseph, but from Shabkar. Um, the mind's nature is as vivid as a flawless piece of crystal, intrinsically empty, naturally radiant, ceaselessly responsive. The mind's nature, we can say the heart's nature, the nature of this constitution here is as vivid as a flawless piece of crystal. That's clear, right? That's the capacity of the mind to see clearly, to know truth. Intrinsically empty. Another way to say intrinsically empty is interconnected. So a sense of connection to all beings, to this web of causality that we're living within, to the sense of nature flowing through and around us. Intrinsically empty, naturally radiant, and ceaselessly responsive. This heart that moves and responds and cares in every moment of our lives. This is our natural tendency. How beautiful is that? And somehow, through the conditioning that flows through whiteness and dominance and includes racism and lots of other forces of oppression, we lose this capacity to touch, to taste this, which is right here in so many ways and accessible to us to recover and remember and know. Whiteness strips us of knowing our basic goodness. That really just breaks the heart open. Sometimes just feeling into the losses in my own life as a white bodied person um, can really break my heart. Like, white supremacy, dominance, white privilege has been a great loss for me. Often it can be we can be talked about as like the privilege of whatever, but I actually see it more as a loss of trust, a loss of knowing my own basic goodness, right? And again, this is the air where these are the values um, that we're breathing in. So everybody gets a dose of this. It's our inheritance here. Yeah. Breathing in this air. The job of whiteness is actually to be elusive and invisible. So, it makes sense that when there's a lot of privilege, especially in a white bodied experience, it's harder and harder to see. So we have to work really hard at it. For people of color, not that way because of the impact, the harming, dangerous impact. Whiteness relies on its elusiveness and invisibility to dominate, for power over instead of power with. So, how do we use our Dharma practice to heal the wounds of history right here in the present moment? Because this is what we have to work with, right? We can use our Dharma practice, our mindfulness practice, to wake up to the truth, to the reality, to the manifestations of whiteness, of greed and hatred and delusion, because that's all whiteness is, actually manifestations of these seeds that have been proliferated through the human experience. So, how do we, as Dharma practitioners, model this fierce commitment to the truth, to not turning away from history, from each other, from our bodies, from our hearts? This returning to a sense of embodied belonging that is alive right here. And this is the healing that I think we all could benefit from. So, this question for me arises again and again: Sweetie, what are you doing right now in this moment to plant seeds of belonging rather than seeds of separation? And I'd like to read a couple of quotes from other uh, beings that may shed some light into our sense of the importance of the sense of belonging, making a case for committing to understanding, for being curious about this, our uh, belonging to ourselves and to each other. Larry Yang said that Dharma is about being aware of the needs of communities, not just our own. Right? Being aware of the needs of communities, belonging to each other in community, not just our family and our friends, but all beings in all communities. And this from Thich Nhat Hanh. Our body is a community, and the trillions of non human cells in our body are even more numerous than the human cells. Without them, we could not be here in this moment. Without them, we wouldn't be able to think, to feel, or to speak. There are no solitary beings. The whole planet is one giant living, breathing cell with all its working parts linked in symbiosis. Oh, take that in. This sense of belonging and interconnection. And we can just see this like it's using the ordinary moments of our lives to really wake up to a sense of belonging. You can see this in nature with wind and trees and soil, how there's this interconnected web happening. And we as human beings are a part of that, breathing in the oxygen, stepping on the earth. We're contributing, always contributing, even in uh, our lack of engagement. It's still a contribution because it still supports something moving forward, whatever that something is. And from the Buddha: listen, monks, attend carefully, and I will teach you the totality of things. What is the totality? It is simply the eye and sights, the ear and sounds, the nose and smells, the tongue and tastes, the body and sensations, the mind and mind objects. If anyone were to proclaim a totality beyond this, that person would be speaking of something outside their knowledge. The totality of things, really pointing to how our bodies right here, the body's with all of its senses and its capacity to reflect, to have a mind that thinks and feels and emotional. This is the totality of things for human beings, right? This is it. This is where we live and experience our world. This is where um, we feel into our interconnection, the totality of things. And so the body, so reclaiming our bodies is our maybe the most profound source of learning, uh, in leaning into and learning our natural capacities for love, for kindness, for belonging, ceaselessly responsive, naturally radiant, are these hearts that have the capacity to really know how to not make exceptions for who belongs or what belongs and what doesn't. In the Satipatthana Sutta, this is the discourse that the Buddha gave that really taught us how to practice, taught us the foundations of mindfulness. There's the refrain that appears 13 times in this discourse. And so just to point out the foundations of mindfulness, the first one is the body. So how do you establish mindfulness? You establish mindfulness, or we, not you, me, us, we establish mindfulness right here in and with the body. Okay, so just to pull out some of the points that the Buddha makes again and again and again in this refrain. He tells us to contemplate our experience internally and externally, and both internally and externally. So our job as practitioners is to connect right here with the body, to know what it's teaching us, to feel our life, all of the mind, to have a felt sense of not just the physical sensations of the body, but the felt sense in the body, the felt sense of mind states, of emotions that are known right here in our body. So for example, there might be a moment of fear. Well, how do we know that? Oh, we know it because it's felt in the body. So our practice to disrupting whiteness, being more responsive and understanding a sense of belonging is also right here in our ability to um, to claim our bodies as our spiritual home, right? To know, like, oh yeah, I can feel into my life. I can learn how to be awake. I can learn how to be compassionate right here in this moment, as I learn how to work with this experience of fear that is an emotion that's often known in its thoughts, right? We can tune into fear by noticing the thoughts that are associated and the body sensations that are here, right here, the unpleasantness of that, which is actually a foundation of mindfulness in and of itself, the feeling tone. So using the body, reconnecting with the body to know what it's like to be alive, both internally and then seeing that reflected externally in others. Oh, you have a body, you have fear, you experience fear the same way I do. In this moment, I see how you belong to me because we have the same tendency to get afraid right here. Oh, look at this. This heart mind knows how to be angry. Oh, that heart mind knows how to be angry internally and externally. And in these ordinary moments that we talk and listen to each other, we go about our daily life. It's been such an interesting place to practice for me to like just have the question, oh, how do I belong to you? Oh, I see how I belong to you because I'm intimate. I'm tracking my body's experience as I'm talking to you. And I'm noticing your body's experience too. I'm noticing that often what's moving through you are the same things that move through me. So now I see that, right? Not only is it obvious in that we're breathing the same air, We're exchanging oxygen in the same ways, all of us as human beings. But I can also feel that in our emotional, our physical, the emotional and our physical realities too. And seeing this moment by moment in really ordinary ways, it makes it so much harder to throw another human being out of our heart. It makes it really harder to stand by and observe when a human being is being hurt. That you wouldn't do that for your children, right? If your child was being hurt, you would, if my godchildren were being hurt, I would, there's no doubt in my mind that I would put my body on the line for my godchildren. Well, would I do that for every human being? I don't know. But this is a reality that we can wake up to, not be afraid of, and actually use our practice to reconnect to the ways that we can learn how to heal from these ways that have been stripped from us due to whiteness. And this is true for all of us, no matter our racial conditioning, our cultural conditioning, our familial conditioning. So, contemplating our experience internally and externally, the Buddha points out in the Satipatthana. Contemplating the nature of impermanence, that arising and passing away, and both arising and passing away in our experience. So we can see that all experience comes and goes, that our bodies come and go, our every body is fragile. So we can feel this in our connection with each other, in our moment to moment experience, in the ordinary moments of our experience with each other. And we can actually see how, like, Black bodies are a lot less protected and often hunted in this reality of our Western American culture here. So we can start to wake up to that truth and reconnect to this body that feels and knows how to appreciate, understand that this body is subject to illness, aging, and death like every other body, and allow that to really touch us. And again, in super ordinary moments, like, oh, this body is fragile. Oh, your body is fragile. Oh, I see that you're coughing right now. Oh, this body gets sick. That body gets sick. Yeah, look at that. Oh, this body um, doesn't always work that well. Oh, your body doesn't always work that well. Oh, look at that. Right. And so, just like I was walking down the street the other day, taking a walk in Michigan, and the people that I would see, I would just take a moment and land there and practice with this reflection, like, oh, this body, and just see whatever came to mind. Like, this body is like this. Oh, this body has a stomach ache right now. Oh, you get stomach aches too. Oh, look at that. In this moment, I know that we are connected through this similarity of having a body that is imperfect. And uh, since coronavirus, whenever I go into a grocery store, I would often pass by someone and just have this intention to know, oh, now we are connected because we are breathing in some of the same air in the store, and our masks are doing what they can, and they're imperfect. So we are connected through our breathing process. Like, and it really it's really have had an impact on my heart. Oh, to know, like, gosh, I'm connected with people. It helped me connect with that sense of belonging to each other in moments like this. So you could experiment with these practices or your own these days, and ongoing. And again, hoping that these reflections support our own awakening both to the truths of our lives and our connection to our sense of well-being, and perhaps what has been stripped from us um, in through the experiences of whiteness here in this country, both institutional, value-oriented, structurally, policy, and this human heart-mind conditioning way that we interact with each other moment by moment. I could go on and on and on, clearly, but there needs to be a stopping place. I'm realizing the time is 11:42. Um, and there are 3 minutes. So if you want to post questions or comments, reflections about your own practice in the chat feed, I'll read through them while we're sitting here together for the next few minutes. And if there's something that feels like I could respond to, I'm happy to do that. Mhm. And just reading through some of the comments already, just feeling like, oh yeah, so many practitioners. It's a beautiful thing to remember lineage and all the way back to the Buddha, and including our own personal lineages and all the influences. All the wise beings, all the suffering beings that have been invested in learning something about the heart, mind, something about how to survive and live and stay connected and appreciate connection and know how to belong. The Buddha, all the disciples of the Buddha, all of our teachers, all of our teachers' teachers, our parents, our family, as imperfect as they all are, somehow have contributed to this moment where I can be here and continue to learn. So, in fact, this moment, I belong to all of my ancestors and will contribute to the children, to the force of to plant seeds of something mixed, right? Good and not always good. But I am responsible to the next generation of human beings that are and each other, right? As we all learn and grow and wake up. So just appreciating that that just came through my heart as I glanced through the various names here in the chat feed. Mm. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for practicing. Thanks for your attention. Maybe let's just offer a little blessing, appreciating our practice, our inquiries, our learning, our ability to show up as students and model what it's like to be in process of transformation. Yeah, for the good of all beings. Take good care. Signing off. Have a good day. Enjoy your practice.